the entire history of Man City's alleged cheating. You've clicked on this video for one of two reasons. Either one, you want to fully understand what Manchester City are actually charged of, or two, the charges against them have either stood or fallen through in their active court battle against the Premier League, and you want to understand what it's all about so you can come to your own conclusion too. At the time of recording this, it's still an open trial. I'm sure future me will love the outcome of that trial, and that the verdict will be correct and just. But until future me knows the results of their trial, allow me to now give you the full history of Manchester City's alleged cheating.
Been banned from the Champions League.
Huge unprecedented fine.
It's important for you to all understand everything regardless of the outcome of that trial. There's many layers to all of this, many more than most realize. The allegations span for over a decade and even implicate past managers. I've read the emails, I've read the articles, I've read the charges, and I've read the legal documents. So buckle up for what is the craziest saga in all of modern football. First, a disclaimer, just so I don't get sued in the off chance a City lawyer clicks on a video from a dude with 2,000 subscribers. Every charge or accusation I'm sharing in this video has either been overturned in court or is still in the middle of an active court battle at the time of this recording. They are all allegations based on circumstantial evidence and nothing more until the moment a judge's gavel hits their soundboard and they say otherwise. Okay, let's get into it now. I generally like to joke around, but allow me to correctly set the tone with this quote from City's legal battle with UEFA. This case is by far the most serious breach of regulations to have ever been referred to the adjudicatory chamber, taking into account, in particular, the seriousness, repetition, and intentional nature of the conduct. Many don't realize that what the English Premier League have charged City with are what UEFA, the governing body for football in all of Europe, have already took them to court for 3 years prior. UEFA and the Premier League have both been trying to hold City accountable for the same things with some variation. Therefore, let's go back to November 2018 first, as opposed to starting with the more notorious Premier League charges. AKA, I'm starting with the giant stack of papers, not the small one, which by the way, it's so cool that we have access to this. I'm literally holding redacted, incriminating, leaked emails from a legal document, which we'll get to, trust me. City were fined by UEFA in 2014 a maximum of £49 million for violating financial rules, basically spending more than what they were allowed to. It should have been case closed for that time period, right? Well, things got much worse for City 4 years later in 2018. The catalyst for the current trouble City are in, or the factual circumstances leading to the opening of an investigation, as this Court of Arbitration for Sport, or CAS for short, document puts it, was an article published by German outlet Der Spiegel in November 2018. Der Spiegel published 4 separate chapters, as they like to call it, all about exposing how City have, quote, managed to cheat its way into the top echelons of European football and create a global, immensely profitable football empire, ignoring rules along the way. Now, City have been accused of such for years. Chapter 1 even states that at the start of the article, but what made this article so different from all the others, and why this one was so much more damaging for City, was because this article contained documents obtained through the whistleblower platform Football Leaks. The effects of this are still felt to this day. With help from those emails, Chapter 1 accuses Man City of disguising funding as sponsorship. To fully grasp what that means, you must understand Man City's owner himself and financial fair play rules. Sheikh Mansour bin Zayed Al Nahyan, or also known as Sheikh Mansour for short, is part of the royal family that rules over Abu Dhabi. This effectively makes City a team owned by an entire nation. This is relevant because of who Sheikh Mansour has ties to, which we'll get to, and those financial fair play rules I just mentioned. Financial fair play, or FFP for short, was created by UEFA in September 2009 and put into place in 2011 in order to protect fans from potentially reckless owners spending beyond their means, putting their beloved clubs at long-term risk of administration. Clubs could no longer spend well beyond what they were generating. This complicated things for wealthy people who wanted to buy into football. Roman Abramovich, for example, bought Chelsea 5 years before this rule was ever even imagined, so he could spend whatever he wanted. In a blink of an eye, he transformed Chelsea into one of the biggest winners in all of England. City before Sheikh Mansour were a little like Chelsea before Abramovich. Both decent clubs, but by no means world beaters, nor were they always challenging for silverware. But where their stories differ is not only in the wealth of their newfound owners from the early 2000s, Sheikh Mansour's royal family money could somehow make Abramovich look like a middle-class man, but they also differ in the rules they both had to work under during the formative years of their respective ownerships. FFP put an early and abrupt halt to City's spending. They could suddenly only spend close to what they generated, and since they were not a big club at the time, far from it actually, that wasn't as much as he wanted, in order to sustain their blazing fast growth. So they had to get creative, and this is where all the trouble begins. But quickly, if you're enjoying this video and are finding it informative, a like and subscribe would be very, very appreciated. A lot of work has gone into this, so thank you. Remember when I said understanding who Sheikh Mansour was important to this situation? That knowing who he is relevant to understanding the connections and ties that he's privy to? He's part of a royal family that runs an entire country, but not just a country. They also run and own a few businesses in that country too. In a leaked email obtained by Der Spiegel, Man City's chief financial officer at the time said City were in trouble of violating FFP rules for the season that was just about to conclude by a sum of £9.9 million due to their sudden firing of their manager at the time, Roberto Mancini. The firing was a byproduct of City's owner's thirst for fast, sustained growth. After he failed to defend the title, City chose to quickly move on. But because of this, they had to pay out his contract to finalize the firing, which put City in the red for the financial year. Senior staff scrambled to find solutions, and according to Der Spiegel, they allegedly decided that the club and its sponsors would manipulate their sponsorship contracts for the just finished season, and that they would act as though they had the deal agreed upon at the beginning of the season. Etihad, one of the biggest airlines in the world, was one of the sponsors who allegedly had their deals altered in this way. They were to hand over an additional £1.5 million to help City stay within the rules. You might be thinking, how could they convince a reputable airline to suddenly pay a huge sum of money for a season that had already finished? Well, why the sponsor allegedly agreed to do this is the final puzzle piece in everything I have said up until now. Etihad, their shirt and stadium name sponsor, is a company based in Abu Dhabi and was run by Sheikh Mansour's half-brother. Because of that connection, Sheikh Mansour was able to allegedly funnel his own money through Etihad. According again to these leaked emails, Etihad would wait for the holding company, Abu Dhabi United Group, which belongs to Sheikh Mansour and owns Manchester City, to wire money to Etihad. That money would then be, quote, forwarded on to City. Their CFO also added in an email of his own to, quote, note that out of the £67.5 million that Etihad pays City every year, £8 million should be funded directly by Etihad and 59.5 by Abu Dhabi United Group. Based off of these quotes in these emails, you can circumstantially piece together a picture that Sheikh Mansour was hiding tens of millions of pounds of funding under the guise of sponsorship revenue to comply with spending rules, and that City executives were altering contracts with no fear of any repercussions because Simon Pierce, one of said club executives at the time, said, quote, we can do what we want in an internal email. 6 famous words that have led to rival clubs and fans hating City from there on out. And in regard to hating City, because of all this context I've shared and much more yet to come, I want a quick aside to discuss how I think some people do take it too far. There's racial undertones when some talk about all of this that I don't like. The reason Sheikh Mansour's background is important is to understand the power he possesses, and nothing else. If you take it beyond that, I think you're lame and you should click off this video, honestly. These allegations and circumstantial evidence gathered through leaked emails enrages me from a sporting perspective. It appears to me like a lack of merit for accolades that they've achieved since Sheikh Mansour's takeover, and nothing beyond that. Anyways, back on topic. Straight from CAS's legal document, based on the evidence in Chapter 1 of the Der Spiegel report and from their proceedings with City, UEFA concluded that Sheikh Mansour's holding company did make payments through Etihad, meaning that they did not truthfully declare its sponsorship income, and that Sheikh Mansour covered 85% of Etihad's reported contributions. That's hundreds of millions of additional funding City would have otherwise not been able to receive from their owner. This is an insane level of dancing around the rules that everyone else has to follow, all in the name of making City a top club as soon as humanly possible. Etihad weren't the only ones implicated either. Abar, the Abu Dhabi investment firm, also seemingly had their contracts manipulated to pay an additional £500,000 for the season that just concluded in order for City to comply with the rules. Also, of the £15 million annually that they were reported to pay City to be a sponsor of the club, Simon Pierce said this in a leaked email. As we discussed, the annual direct obligation for Abar is £3 million. The remaining £12 million requirement will come from alternative sources provided by His Highness. Once again, from those leaked emails alone, Sheikh Mansour appears to have paid a portion of another sponsorship's obligation to City himself in an attempt to disguise personal funding as revenue for the club in order to stay compliant within UEFA's spending regulations and to sustain City's fast ascent to the top of world football. In my personal opinion, those emails look very bad and, if true, are inexcusable and deliberate. And to show you how some executives felt about this at the time on the inside, I take you back to those 6 famous words. The total scale of City's spending at that time was more than we've ever seen before in the history of football. In Chapter 2 of Der Spiegel's report on City, they gathered that Sheikh Mansour roughly spent £1.1 billion of his own money his first 4 years in charge alone. Spending money isn't inherently a bad thing, in my opinion, even at that eye-watering level. Neither is having a very rich owner. The issue is that they seemingly worked hard to get around new spending rules and felt as if they could do whatever they wanted. In the sporting world, this is especially dangerous. You have to keep some sense of equality in order to make things competitive, or the whole facade of sports comes crashing down. If clubs don't all have have the same level of resources at their disposal, it's imperative that they at least follow the same rules and regulations. We watch for competition and entertainment. This is not that. This is a result of unprecedented amount of spending over an entire decade, but not exactly in the ways you may be thinking. Their rivals Manchester United have a higher net spend on player transfers than City of late, and that's because City have hired fantastic footballing people when United haven't. City are a well-oiled machine. They have created an elite sporting environment and they have executed to perfection. Many other rich clubs can't say the same the past decade and a half. Honestly, most of them can't. Don't let this part fall on deaf ears. My respect to the everyday folk who work in football and have done well behind the scenes. And if you work at City and are watching this somehow, I think you deserve credit. The criticism of the actions beyond your control aren't a reflection of you. You did the job, have recruited players better than any other club this past decade, and maintained an elite sporting environment. Anyways, my point is that unprecedented spending goes beyond just smart player purchases and sales, even though it is a big reason. After Sheikh Mansour's takeover, they sought to transform absolutely everything about the club. In 2011, they announced the Etihad campus, an overhaul of the neighboring plots of land around City Stadium, train stations, new training facilities, a new leisure center, office and retail space, an expansion of their current stadium to house more fans, and even a 20,000 indoor seated stadium is about to be completed too. Yes, an entire stadium that would have the capacity to house a flagship NBA team. The results of this level of investment benefits the local people. Between local City fans and their owners, it's seemingly a symbiotic relationship. I would be remiss to make this video without acknowledging that all of this development has created new jobs and quality of life improvements to the area around the Etihad. City's owners have positively invested in that area, and my anger towards their alleged cheating won't stop me from saying that. The situation is complicated. Life is complicated. I have to give you the full story, the bad and the good. Their intentions in making this level of investment, we will never know them. It has benefited the local people regardless, but it has also benefited the football club on the pitch, as they have created a platform for success like no other club in the world. And with plans to further develop the area around the stadium continuing, it may only improve. If only they took their time with all these improvements to stay within the rules instead of this current mess. According to Der Spiegel, City's brass at the time gave a name of their methods to allegedly circumvent FFP rules. They called it Project Longbow. In addition to allegedly masking funding from their owners as sponsorship revenue, they allegedly began shifting a lot of their operational costs to other subsidiary companies to make it appear as if their costs were lower than they actually were. Player marketing rights were to no longer be paid by City. They were to be paid by another subsidiary company, lowering City's costs. But not only lowering their costs, but increasing their revenue, as they would sell those marketing rights to this alleged shell company. 30 million euros is the figure Der Spiegel shared. This internal document obtained by Der Spiegel shows that Sheikh Mansour's holding company, yet again, would cover the difference, or in this case, cover the losses incurred by this third-party company. When auditors behalf of UEFA got wind of this third-party company a year later, and networks began to reach out for comment, City played the victim by responding with, quote, "The attempted damage to the club's reputation is organized and clear." Oddly enough, this never made it part of UEFA's charges, or a part of CAS proceedings. The last major finding from Der Spiegel's 4th chapter of the expose on Man City has to do with their former manager Roberto Mancini. Der Spiegel alleges that Man City only paid part of his salary. Al Jazeera of the UAE Pro League paid the rest, a club coincidentally with heavy investment from Sheikh Mansour. Der Spiegel alleges £1.45 million were paid by City and £1.75 million by Al Jazeera annually, and apparently that additional money was done under the guise of a consulting contract. Surprisingly, there was no mention of this in CAS's document or UEFA's charges either, but there is in the Premier League charges, which we'll get to. I said earlier in this video that having a wealthy owner that is willing to spend is not a bad thing, and I believe that. My problem lies with owners that are so wealthy and connected that they can allegedly do things such as what was done with Mancini. When an owner is tied to an entire nation, they are truly on an entirely unreachable level. So everything was grand, right? I've shared all this evidence from the Der Spiegel chapters, which sparked an investigation from UEFA. They were caught red-handed, right? Well, investigations and charges are one thing. Making charges for those investigations stick is another. We now have to talk about their legal battle in more detail in order to understand how City eventually got around their charges, and what it could mean for City's current battle with the Premier League. A quick but important introduction and distinction. CAS is the Court of Arbitration of Sport. They were meant to be a third-party court in those proceedings to see if UEFA's charges are just, or if City's appeal was merited. UEFA's investigatory chamber notified Man City it had formally opened an investigation of them after the information Der Spiegel obtained on March 7th, 2019. From March 28th to April 11th, City had a hearing in front of the investigatory chamber. This is before anything went to court. City were meant to defend themselves and cooperate with UEFA's investigation during these hearings. But once details from those hearings were beginning to leak to the public, City, seemingly offended by this, took UEFA to CAS. Some, myself included, saw this as a delay and diversion tactic, but I digress. progress, but during that appeal process, on February 14th, 2020, City's charges from UEFA shockingly landed. A 2-year ban from competing in the Champions League and a €30 million fine. A 2-year absence from the biggest European competition had huge financial ramifications, so this was a very serious charge. But with City already in contact with CAS, they quickly added to their appeal. After charges landed, 1. City questioned the admissibility of the leaked email evidence. Basically, they questioned if the illegally obtained emails were valid evidence. 2. City complained about a series of procedural issues, like UEFA seemingly leaking confidential information from their hearings to the media. And 3. City questioned if the, quote, alleged breaches fell within the prescribed period. City's lawyers argued that all of this happened too long ago to be punishable in court. Okay, this is where their battle in court now really begins. All to see if these charges would stick or not. The stakes were massive for City, as hundreds of millions in future revenue was on the line, as was their reputation. And I think that matters even more to them. Something very amusing to me that I find very telling in these CAS legal documents is that the documents highlight the variations in the language City and UEFA used. City would refer to the emails as criminally obtained documents, and UEFA would call them leaked documents. City were really pushing hard that this evidence obtained was through an illegal fashion in order to delegitimize the evidence that the whole investigation was centered around and built on. But when UEFA continuously demanded for City to send copies of the leaked emails themselves, City actually eventually agreed to in front of CAS. City's lawyers are so good though that they managed to retain their position that the evidence was still admissible in court because they were originally obtained illegally. They also talked their way out of having to share entire email threads and only the legitimate copies of already leaked emails. This is something I haven't heard anyone really talk about. CAS had legitimate copies of the emails in question provided to them, and City were actually unsuccessful in having the evidence completely thrown out. They were, however, successful in convincing CAS that this evidence was not beyond any doubt proof of cheating. City argued these emails provided no factual basis of fault, only inference, and that the standard of proof should be higher and beyond reasonable doubt. This is why I've always been calling the leaked emails to be circumstantial evidence. We can see them talking about what they're doing, but there is no evidence of it actually happening. No bank statements, no damning testimonies, nothing. And void of evidence that's beyond reasonable doubt, City provided their own evidence in their defense. An expert forensic review that ADUG made no disguised payments to Etihad, and through testimony they concluded that Simon Pierce simply misspoke in his emails. The $8 million came from Etihad's marketing budget, the remaining came from Etihad's central funds. That's why the payments were split, not because Sheikh Mansour's holding company was covering the majority. No evidence beyond the leaked emails, and City's defense threw things into their favor. But my friends, please realize this. CAS and UEFA never received the full picture. In my opinion, City expertly reframed proceedings in their favor, and as UEFA stated adamantly, City never fully cooperated with their investigation, which by the way, CAS ended up agreeing with UEFA on that point. We even saw it earlier with City refusing to provide full email threads, and instead only just legitimate copies of the already leaked emails. As for City's argument that everything should be time barred, UEFA is based in Switzerland. That's why CAS was the court used, as they are also based in Switzerland. UEFA must abide by Swiss law, and City argued that UEFA ran out of time under Swiss law to make their claim before a maximum period of 12 months. Therefore, the majority of charges were also unsubstantiated because of this point alone. CAS, however, did find no evidence of UEFA leaking any information during their hearing with City, and like I already said, agreed with UEFA that City did not cooperate with their investigation. In conclusion, after all that was leaked, shared, charged, and scrutinized in and out of court, City successfully fought off their Champions League ban during their appeal in court. UEFA could not get the proof they needed to prove City's cheating beyond the leaked emails, and many alleged infractions could not be charged because of time passed alone. This is summarized in line 272. It boils down to the burden of proof. Given that UEFA carries the burden of proof, and because the majority of the panel finds that it did not succeed in satisfying such burden, UEFA's allegations must be dismissed. This is and was Pep's favorite cop-out, as well as with many City fans too, I'm sorry to say. Their argument is often along the lines of, well, look what happened with UEFA. We overturned that ruling, we were right, and are innocent. Pep and City fans, we've all seen the emails. The people have seen the evidence, even if only circumstantial. City won in court, but not in the streets. The court said not guilty, but there's enough here for the streets to feel otherwise. And not just the streets, but other clubs too. 9 Premier League clubs intervened to formally oppose any delays Man City tried to create in the appeal decision. They were all desperate to see Man City pay for their alleged cheating. Does this paint a grim outlook for the Premier League charges? Well, first we have to know how similar the charges are. All we have at the time of recording is the Premier League statement from their website and nothing else. No words on a possible ban, or how long the ban would be, or what evidence they have. They're waiting until after the court battle to hand out their punishment, which given how things went with UEFA may not be a bad thing. We all know the famous number, 115. The Premier League have charged Manchester City with 115 counts of financial cheating. The charges span from 2009 up until 2018. Section 1 mostly relates to City's financial reporting, with some charges being handed out over multiple years. The rules being listed here means City have been charged for breaking them. However, the same rule could be listed under a different letter each year of the Premier League's handbook, so it's a bit confusing and hard to follow. Rule B13 related to City acting in good faith towards the league and the rules, and C71, C72, and C75 all have to do with financial reporting to some degree. This could be for City not reporting their finances well for 9 years, or it could be related to not disclosing alleged payments made through Sheikh Mansour's holding company. We don't know yet. Section 2 has to do with everything related to Mancini's consulting contract with another club, and City failing to disclose it. Section 3 has to do with City not complying with UEFA's financial fair play rules, which they have already been fined for by UEFA, so I have no idea how they could get around those charges, to be honest. Section 4 has to do with City breaking the Premier League's own financial fair play rules, or as they like to call it, profit and sustainability rules. And finally, Section 5 has to do with City failing to cooperate and assist with investigations again. If you tally everything up, Sky made this smart graphic to show the results. 54 counts of failure to provide accurate and up-to-date financial information, 14 counts of failure to provide accurate financial reports for player and manager compensations, 5 counts of failure to comply with UEFA's regulations, including financial fair play regulations, 7 counts of breaching Premier League profit and sustainability regulations, and lastly 35 counts of failure to cooperate with Premier League investigations. So a lot of it is the same as their case versus UEFA, but there are some key differences. Unlike UEFA, which had no mention of Mancini, City have been charged with failing to report accurate compensation for the manager and player too. So what do we, the public, not know? That player part is quite a detail we've never seen before. Also, like I said, not only are City being charged with breaking UEFA's financial fair play rules, which they've already been previously fined for, they're being charged for breaking the Premier League's too. There's seemingly more for City to fight off this time around. However, they could use similar arguments they used versus UEFA, and they are again failing to comply with investigations, potentially leaving the league without the evidence to see this through. The only way I see more charges sticking this time is if the Premier League managed to obtain more evidence that transactions were actually made, as opposed to just leaked emails. There is, however, no time-barred evidence this time around. That loophole is closed in England. But with what we know, I think the league still faces an uphill battle. It's also absolutely vital for the Premier League to get City on charges that they have given out, because if they don't, which club would take the league seriously? If they can't uphold the rules they felt a club has broken, what's stopping everyone else from doing whatever they like, not complying with investigations and then escaping unpunished? The sanctity of the sport and fair compensation will start to deteriorate if the league can't uphold the rules they felt were broken 115 times. So there it is. That's everything. I hope that you now feel you have a full picture of everything City are accused for and are confident in whatever conclusion you yourself come to. I also hope you also understand where I personally stand on this. City refusing to comply with investigations and the leaked emails are enough for me to know which side of things I personally stand on. If you agree or disagree with me, please join the conversation down below. Like I said earlier this video, life is complex, as is this situation too. City's owners have done good service by developing the area around City Stadium, but we may never know their true motivations or how they really went about accomplishing their goals either. Thanks for watching.